don't know whether she does or not, but she has always that air of China.
Cloud hanging over you always.
Yes. We have had clouds blowing. But you know, but my husband was a little bit nervous, always the smiling, happy one, but deep down he wasn't that. But you can tell that that's people's personality.
Yeah.
And her husband, I mean, he's a very nice guy, and, but he's a little too heavy for my taste. But he is in, they live in Florida, and I wish they lived so.
Got going now?
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
I'm going to teach the 10th grade, but I want to take a moment to say hello.
I think that is wonderful.
Well, you are very special.
Okay.
How are you, my dear?
I'm good. Are you all right?
I'm very well. I'm feeling better.
You must have had a much harder, a very hard accident.
It was very hard. Slowly. I'm glad you're good to speak to these kids and tell them the story. You should show them the story. Is these all 7th graders and they're all going to read them?
Oh,
What?
they're all on the board too, of course.
I know, but I mean, they'll...
Is it open?
Yeah.
I'm not going to read from the tour.
No, you're not going to read from it, but let's do this.
I mean, the kids are.
No, but this is, they will all read from this when they become bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah. What?
That's the one they use?
So,
She's speaking from here. She wasn't speaking.
that's fine, of
You want
course.
to put it here?
Are
You
you
put it
all
here,
right?
we'll put it right there. But are you introducing Betty, or?
No.
No, I think Fletcher is.
What's that?
I think he is.
Why
I don't know. You can introduce. I'd be delighted if you did.
No, I'm delighted to do it. I'm also teaching a group.
He might not know what I'm going to teach a group too. He might not know, but I think for these kids to know that cover, not only that you donated it, but it's connected to you, and they will all read from it. I think it's an important connection for them to be.
Oh.
It makes it real. It's like, oh, I get it. So, how do you think about this election, my dear?
Oh, don't talk to me about it. If I did not have children here,
Yes.
I would have come back to Amsterdam, and I don't think it's so wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I happen to be going.
Are you still seeing this man?
Oh, he died. You know he died. Yes, it was 3 years ago. I wish he didn't, because sometimes I'm ashamed how much I miss him. But he had a very wonderful time. And, Tensor doesn't make, was a nice guy.
Is it gentle?
Yes, every inch. And I have known him.
I remember you knew him before
we
we
were
were children. Do you know this story? You know the story?
I'm sorry.
Do you know the story? So Betty, if I remember the story. So Betty was married to Ray for decades. And he died, and then she reconnected with this man whom she knew when they were children.
I didn't know that.
Yes, he called me, and his wife had died. And he's very easy to talk to, always was. And I remember when I had first met him,
Come up first 2 rows.
called and he called. And he said, should I come out to New York?
You don't remember how to date anyone.
No, but It was wonderful. It really was a little crisis. And I took it over. I miss it.
How are your children?
My children are good. Zach lives in Dallas. My grandson
Okay. Regular to the house.
for 8 months. He's home everything. But he lives in Dallas for... Hi! You know, they grow bigger every year. Yes. And not only that they grow bigger, they grow more beautiful every year.
So that's what I have to teach.
Okay, you got it. Okay, it was nice meeting you.
All right, baby, I'll come back down later.
Oh,
You need anything?
How are you today? How are you? Good. I'm glad because I only want to have people here that are good and feeling good. You know, they're bigger every year. They grow bigger every year. Would you mind sitting on that side? It's easier if I can talk to one side. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, wait a second. I have to introduce you.
Yes, no, but I had asked
Oh,
her
yes.
to move from that, to move over.
Okay.
And I want to say thank you. That is what I was saying. I know you're going to introduce me. The rabbi took that out.
For a specific reason.
Yes, yes.
So
Because
that's the way I'm going to introduce you.
oh, I see. Okay. And
So, if I could have your attention, please. In anywhere between 6 months, 4 months, year and a half, or a couple of years ago, you will or have read from Torah when you become Bar Mitzvah of our synagogue. And when you do that, you're going to read from this Torah scroll. And why am I holding it right now, making jangling noises? Because this Torah scroll is a scroll that was sort of saved from the scrolls that were captured by Germans to create a museum of an extinct people. This is a Holocaust scroll, and in fact, this scroll, this cover was donated by Betty Knoop and her husband to be a reminder, as the Holocaust scroll cover has her family names in it, that we don't forget about this connection with this community that is no longer. These people who are no longer. Betty's story is a stirring story, not about German or Poland, but as I got to in my description over there in the other room, later on, the country, the Netherlands or Holland, was sort of attacked by Germany, and she'll tell you all about both the bad and the good and the bad of what the Holland community did. So again, I appreciate your treating this with the history and the solemnness that this history gives us. But I also want to remind you that in, like I said, 3, 6 months to a year and a half, the celebration you're going to have with this Holocaust skull, donated by this Holocaust survivor to cover, and again, all the names of the family on the inside, as you become your bat or bar mitzvah.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being here. You know, I'm looking at you, and every year you're more beautiful, you're taller. I don't know what's happening to you. But anyway, I'm happy to see you. And the story I'm going to tell you is very painful. It will be, and it is very painful for me because it brings back all memories that are always with me, but I go into more specifics. But let me tell you, I was born in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. I also want you to know that Jews at the time that I was born had lived already for 300 years in the Netherlands, and we were Dutch. We were your American Jews, we were Dutch Jews. Never anything could happen to us. But anyway, I was born as Elizabeth Paper. My parents, my mom Clara and my dad Abraham, gave me and my brother Philip really a wonderful life. We were spoiled. Sometimes I'm very happy that we were spoiled. We had everything. A warm home, a close family. The family was, my dad had 3 sisters, his parents of course, and my mom's parents. We lived in a certain area where we visited back and forth, like I hope you do too. My mom had 2 brothers, one without children, and he lived in Belgium, in Antwerp. And when we went to Antwerp, that was like you went to the United States, it seemed that far. But it was close enough that we saw one another often. Another brother lived with his wife and 2 children in Amsterdam. I remember them all, and when I talk to you, I will tell you what happened to all of them. There are many more people, friends I went to school with and played with. I have to admit, the older I get, the more I think of them and want to talk about them. After all, when I am gone, there is nobody to remember them. I really believe that the Holocaust was the most incomprehensible and the worst dehumanizing experience of the 20th century. And when I stand here in front of you, I sometimes find it impossible to believe that I really lived through this experience in person with my family for five very long years. It happened more than 70 years ago, and I was a child. I was a child condemned to death. And I'm here today because I want to transfer my memories to you. For when there are no more survivors left, you will have to relate what you have heard so you can speak for us, so that those horrendous crimes will never be forgotten. I'm very fortunate. I, Elizabeth Knoop, can speak to you. 6 million people were murdered. Don't ever forget that fact. 1,500,000 girls and boys under the age of 15 were never able to see their homes and dreams fulfilled. Their lives were destroyed. Hitler had determined to exterminate every Jew in Europe, and I had come very close. And when I tell you that these children could never have their dreams fulfilled. I don't know what you want to do. You're in middle school, you go to high school, you hope to go to college. Maybe today you want to be a nurse and next week you want to be a physician or an artist. Whatever you want, you can dream about it. And those 1,500,000 children dreamt that too, but their dreams could never be fulfilled, and yours will. You know, Hitler really started his war in Germany against the Jews in 1932. That war widened in September 1939 when the German army invaded Poland, and on Friday, the 10th of May 1940, when Hitler's armies invaded the Low Countries, Belgium and the Netherlands. The Netherlands, my country of birth. The Netherlands, where Jews had lived for about 300 years. The Dutch Jews wanted to believe that nothing could happen to them. After all, we were Dutch. The German Jews had to worry, because many of them had settled in Holland. I'm sure you're familiar with the story of Anne Frank. And they were not the only German Jewish family settling in Holland. Those were the people. I remember hearing the adults around me talk about that. First of all, Holland was going to stay neutral. It had to be neutral during the First World War, and it's going to be neutral now. But if they come in, we have nothing to worry about. It's the German Jews. Well, frankly, that wasn't so. On the 10th of May 40, Hitler's army invaded the Low Countries and Holland capitulated within 4 days. For us children, life seemed to go on as usual. School was awaiting us. I had chicken pox, I remember that well. And believe me, that kept me far more occupied than the war. Then the decrees and orders against us Jews, men, women and children, came fast. The orders were really made so they could destroy our pride and self-esteem. Unfortunately, the Germans succeeded too well. We were stripped of our rights, our social standing, businesses and possessions were confiscated, and I remember so well, so very well, how we had to deliver our bicycles, our toys, radios, cameras, jewelry to an assigned meeting place. And I used to wear, I did not grow up in a religious family. We were Jewish, that was it. But my father had felt, or my mom too, my parents, that their children had to learn not only to speak French, German and English, after all nobody speaks Dutch, but they also had to learn to speak Hebrew because they were convinced that there was going to be a state of Israel. So we had a private teacher come to the house who taught us Hebrew as a living language. No prayer book Hebrew, the way it was spoken in Israel. So when the young man that gave us those lessons was one of the children's leaders in the synagogue, and so I told my mom, I'm going on Saturday morning. We had school on Saturday morning, but I could go as long as we didn't have French, because we would get French. That would be done on Saturday morning. I had to go to French. That was more important. So I went to synagogue every Saturday morning during the first year maybe of my Hebrew lessons. And I often think of this man. His name had been Job 1000. I think he was all of 19 years old. But to me he was a man, a mister. But I asked for my 6th birthday for my parents. I wanted the Star of David to wear. Just like I wear here or some other kind of idiocy, I wanted the Star of David. And, I was becoming very religious. My mom used to tease me and call me Mrs. Orthodox, or Miss Orthodox. And I got the Star of David, and I had to bring that Star of David with my bicycle, with my scooter, with other toys to a certain place, and I had to give it. And when I had to give this up, and instead of this, I got this Star of David. It's filthy, it's big. It is filthy now, but it was filthy then too. And we had to wear that. It says Jood, which stands for Jew in Dutch. We had to wear that on all our outer clothing. So it had to be on this sweater, it had to be on the shirt. If I had a coat over this, it had to be on my coat. And all of a sudden, it didn't feel so good any longer to wear that Star of David. Someone once said, the Germans had to create an enemy, so that's why they put that star on us, with Jood in big black letters, so that our neighbors would learn to despise us, because there wouldn't have been a person in the world who would have known the difference. Large signs, forbidden to Jews, appeared everywhere. Mom used to take us swimming, but the pool came forbidden. No more ice skating, no more movie, no walks in the park or outside playgrounds. We also had to leave our schools. Believe me, I remember that well. Our classes had less pupils daily. And of course that also went for our teachers. I really believe that our education during that time left a lot to be desired. Because children had to be picked up during the night to be sent to the camps, and unfortunately mostly murdered. That also happened to the different teachers. It's so hard to visualize, but we changed teachers like sometimes 2-3 days we had a new teacher. It was so true. February 1941, after a fight between Dutch Nazis and Jews, where the Jews managed to kill a Nazi member, the Germans retaliated by taking off the street 450 young men. And I'm telling you this, these men were between the ages of 18 and 40, young men. They were taken out of their houses, they were taken off the street, they were severely beaten and thrown onto trucks. They were immediately sent to the concentration camp Buchenwald in Germany. And after 6 weeks, whoever survived that ordeal was to be sent to the concentration camp Mauthausen, a camp in Austria where they had to work in the salt mines. By September 1941, 6 months after the raid in February, not a single one of those men survived. 450 young, very young men. I also have to tell you here that a miracle took place in Amsterdam. My mom was taking us to school and we encountered men carrying big signs. Strike, strike, put down the newspaper delivery, put down the milk, whatever services there were. We are striking. We are striking in protest to what the occupation is doing to our Dutch Jewish citizens. I was very confused. I wasn't 10 years old yet, and frankly, I didn't know what a strike meant. That strike lasted 4 days, then the Germans retaliated, took many people hostage, and took at random 9 people, bing, 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 and shot them. That strike still today is remembered every year at the memorial to the dock workers. That's in front. If you ever visit Amsterdam, there is the old Sephardic synagogue. It's over 300 years old, and they never touched that synagogue. In front of that synagogue is a monument to the dock workers, and every year on February that is being remembered. If you visit the city of Amsterdam, it's worthwhile seeing that synagogue. It is still lit by candlelight. It's really something very special. And it is in front, it was of course an act of solidarity and enormous courage. September 1942. So my Aunt Henny, every time I say don't say it, but she was my favorite aunt. I don't know whether you have a favorite aunt, but I did. I adored my aunt. She lived very close to us, and I spent a lot of time with her and my cousins, Mary and Betty. She was big Betty. I was little Betty. We were picked up in the middle of the night and thrown in jail. And I remember thinking very clearly, will I ever see my aunt, my cousin Betty, my uncle Saul, and my cousin Mary alive again? I don't believe that a 10-year-old child thinks that way, but I did. My aunt and my cousin Betty and Mary were murdered September 14th, 2 days after Betty's 14th birthday. My uncle lived until April 1945 and died in the concentration camp Buchenwald on the 3rd of April 45, a few weeks short before the liberation of that camp. I will never forget that my dad searched in the different displaced people camps for his oldest niece Mary. He always felt sure if any of his sister's family would survive, it had to be his niece Mary. But of course, it was to no avail. Mary had been 16 years old when they murdered her. On October 30th, my opa, my grandfather, died. My father's father, he had been quite ill, and I'm telling you that this because at my grandfather's funeral, my dad, his brother-in-laws, and my brother had to put my opa's casket on top of a pushcart and walk to the cemetery for cars were denied us. January 18, 1943. The Dutch Nazi police rang our doorbell. It was early in the afternoon. They really came to pick up my grandmother, my great, wonderful Oma. My mom's mother, she had lived with us since my mom's father had passed away, I believe in 37 or 38, I don't remember. It was anyway before the invasion of the German armies. It had been in the afternoon. My dad wasn't home. So it was the Dutch Nazi police. We were not picked up by the Germans. We were picked up by the Dutch Nazi police. The Amsterdam police was frightful. They said, you know Mrs. Mock, because they were also very polite. My Oma's name was Mrs. Mock. Wouldn't you be much more comfortable if you have your family with you? So they took my mom, my brother, myself, of course my Oma, put onto a truck, and from the truck taken straight to the train station on a train, and we ended up in Westerbork. That was still a deportation camp in Holland. It was still in Holland. I don't remember much of that ride. It had been dark, it was cold, it was the 18th of January. But I remember arriving in Westerbork when people were passing the train and saying, elderly people and sick people, please stay on the trains, we will help you disembark. Sounded nice enough. So my Oma said to my mom, her daughter, you know, Clara, you have the two children, you have your hands full, I have them help me off the train and we'll see you later. You know, I never saw my Oma again. She was a little lady. There was nothing that my brother and I couldn't do to her. Everything was good. Everything was fine. And there was nobody as wonderful as her grandchildren. I must say it's something I have inherited, because I think my grandchildren are the greatest. There is nobody like them. But she really adored us. You know, 6 million people were murdered. This little lady was my Oma. We really adored her. She was murdered on January 26, 1943 at Auschwitz. Let me tell you a little bit about Westerbork. I remember that camp quite well. Westerbork was a deportation camp in Holland. It was built by the Dutch Jewry for German Jewish refugees without money or work permits. It was a really drab piece of land in the north of Holland, near the German border, and even though the Dutch government decided to build there a Jewish community, the Dutch Jewish community had to pay for the building of the camp. To me, the camp seemed large. We lived in wooden barracks. We slept in iron triple bunk beds with wooden benches and tables on the side. Dark, small, no decent facilities. It was quite awful. Always dirt all around you. Holland is a very rainy country, and the streets there hadn't been paved, so we always had mud on our shoes. We were a bit hungry, but my dad could send us food packages from Amsterdam, and that helped a lot. On March 15, 1943, a miracle happened. My mom, my brother, and myself were released from Westerbork and returned to Amsterdam to be reunited with my dad. Believe me, our happiness had no words. All four of us together again. A miracle, and it really was. Our happiness didn't last very long, however, because my grandmother Elizabeth, the woman I'm named for, was picked up from her house and right away transported to Sobibor, a camp in Poland where she was murdered on March 26, 1943. I never knew my dad to be defeated, but his despair was frightening to see, for no matter how hard he tried, he had not been able to get his mom. April 1943, we were told to move. Amsterdam, a city in the Netherlands, where we had never known a ghetto, never ever. Now we had one, but all Jews were in one spot, so it was very easy to pick us up and then send us on to Poland. But you know, we were still in the city, and we had a little, in Amsterdam, and we had a little house, and I know that my brother and I didn't feel terribly bad about it. I'm sure my parents had different emotions. April 1943 saw my mom's brother, her brother Alexander, and his wife, plus their 2 children, my cousins Eva, 14 years old, and my cousin Philip, 12 years old, taken from their home and sent to Sobibor, a camp in Poland, to be murdered on April 30th, 1943. You know, my aunt had been a very religious woman. She had grown up in an orphanage, I believe, and every now and then on Saturday afternoon we went to visit them. And I would love to be in our house because she would light a Havdalah candle. You know what a Havdalah candle is? And she made, I thought that was the most beautiful ceremony, and I still like it. I like to see people do that. I really think I love the braided candle, and it evoked very special feelings. While we were living in the ghetto, the Germans took my dad hostage. He had been involved with the resistance, so his arrest had been very frightening to my mom, brother, and me. I also remember living in the ghetto. I woke up with a toothache. My brother was ill, so my mom couldn't take me to the dentist, and I had to go alone out of the ghetto to a strange dentist who kept me waiting in his room all afternoon. I had to be home before dark, or by 8 o'clock. And I was the first patient there. He looked at me and he decided to distract a brand new molar. Because after all, I would not be able to return, and that tooth would never bother me again. Believe me, he really enforced the fact that our likelihood to stay in Amsterdam was very slim. And at last, on the 29th of September 1943, my father was still in jail. The Germans emptied ghetto, and my mom, my brother, and me saw us again in Westerbork. The camp was far more frightening, and the transports to the east became more menacing. I remember those transports too well. Every Monday, trains, cattle wagons, believe me, not fit for human travel, rolled into the camp. And every man, every woman, girl and boy knew once they had to get in that train, where did we go? What was going to happen to us? The menace every week was really sickening, for we were incarcerated in Holland. But Westerbork had been in Holland, and Holland was still our home. What was in store for us once we left was very frightening, and we really couldn't imagine. And I remember too well how every Monday night the SS came into our barracks. The fright that took hold of everyone, I can't describe. I can still hear the yelling and screaming of the people whose names were called and had to leave. I can feel the relief of those of us whose names were not called and could stay at least one more week in Westerbork. Westerbork was in Holland. Yes, we were incarcerated, but Holland was our home. Shortly after we arrived again in Westerbork, my dad was released from jail and sent to Westerbork, and there too, like a common criminal, had to be in a special jail barrack. But he had been able to get a job outside prison walls, so we saw him daily, and knowing that my dad was near made us all feel better. My father had also been in Westerbork so that he could say goodbye to his youngest sister, his sister Mies, and her husband Aaron with their daughter, my cousin Billy, arrived there to be sent to Sobibor to be murdered, all three of them, on November 6, 1943. I often think of my cousin. She was a very pretty girl. To me she seemed little. She really wasn't that little. She was beautiful. She had a big head of blonde hair. And she always, when you talked to her, she would look at you because she really wanted to know what you were saying. You see, our Bilsie had been born a deaf mute. They murdered her when she was 9 years old. At last, on February 1944, my parents, my brother and myself were transported to Bergen-Belsen. Bergen-Belsen was a concentration camp in Germany. It was an extermination camp by starvation. There were no gas chambers. If you were lucky enough. I don't want to go into too much. Came in Bergen-Belsen, February 44, and on the 9th of April 1945, 14 months after our arrival, they put us again in trains. No food, no water, no facilities. We lived in boxcars without the train. We were in this train. That train stopped every now and then. We were surrounded by the English, American and Russian army. But our train kept rolling on. We were supposed to have gone to Theresienstadt. And I remember even that we stopped in Berlin and that city was in shambles. I'll never forget the nightmare of the 2 weeks long train ride. To me, it has been the most frightening time. We were pushed in the cars, maybe 70, 80 people in a wagon. We were exhausted. People died every day. Sometimes we could bury somebody at the side of the road. Sometimes we just had to throw the bodies out of the train. It was the most horrendous and unbelievable experience of the time, of the 5 years that we had been in war. We had been surrounded by the English, American and Russian armies, and on the 23rd of April 1945, the Russian armies liberated us in a town called Ströbitz, near the Polish border. All 4 of us, my mom, my dad, my brother and myself. It really was a miracle. On the 26th of April, however, we lost my mom. She died during that night. She knew we were liberated. I guess she just could not cope any longer. She had been a very young woman. She had been 36 years old. And I have missed her every day of my life. I'd like to tell you here. During the years 1942, July of 1942, and September 1944, 93 trains, mostly sealed boxcars without food or water, left Westerbork. Those 93 trains carried men, women and children, a total of 103,000 Dutch Jews. 34,000 Dutch Jews were sent to Sobibor, a camp in Poland. Out of 34,000, 19 people survived. 60,000 Dutch Jews were sent to Auschwitz. Out of the 60,000, there were 500 survivors. 5,000 Dutch Jews were sent to Theresienstadt. You see, Theresienstadt had no gas chambers, so if you could stay there, your chance of survival became a little better, and 1,500 people survived. 4,000 Dutch Jews were sent to Bergen-Belsen. 1,100 of us survived, and one of them. Out of 103,000 Dutch Jews, there were only 2,919 survivors. It's very hard to visualize. But it meant 1 out of every 35 people survived that ordeal. And I find it unbelievable every time again that I can talk about that experience. How has it been possible to survive the humiliation? And when I speak to you, I like you to remember all those whose humanness has been denied, while the whole world stood back and grew silent. They suddenly believed that a Jew really was not a person any longer. My reliving the past will only make sense if by doing so it will help the future generations to always remember the genocide and its millions of victims. I hope that I have been able to transmit relevant values to all young people, for I feel strongly that to speak about these incomprehensible crimes have never been greater than today. Dislike of those different than us can lead to gas chambers. Never ever deny that truth. Always guard yourself, protect our freedom, and never take that precious freedom for granted. And don't forget, ever, racism is evil. It debases and degrades the dignity of men, all men. And I feel too, because it was not so easy to, I'm sure, to listen to that.
Thank you, Betty. Can we take some questions?
Yes, I'll take questions.
Sure.
It must be very unusual that your family was kept together for as long as it was. My understanding is that men and women were separated.
Oh, we were separated in the camp, but we saw one another.
Is that unusual?
Yes, that was unusual, but Bergen-Belsen, you had that priority. We were so-called exchange Jews. I believe that my father paid a great deal of money. I mean, he didn't know what was. We could have been sent any place. We could have done business anything. I'll tell you something. When we arrived back in Amsterdam, and I had been very sick, and I was as tall as I am today about. My father had to take me to the hospital, and as we walked into the hospital, he said to me, you know, darling, you gained some weight already. They put me on a scale, and I weighed 54 pounds. I looked like olive oil. I had no hair on my head. I did.
Yeah, but they don't know who olive oil is. The parents
No.
do.
Well, the parents know who olive oil is. They'll tell you who olive oil is. I was arms and legs and tall.
I should have started by thanking Lawson for sharing with all of us. Thank you.
But I think my dad paid a great deal of money to keep the four of us together. Yes.
Was there any other resistance activity that your father was able to do while he was in the camp?
Was there any other resistance that took place while you were in the camps?
No, not that I know of, anyway.
And did your parents try to educate you while you were in
When you were in the camps, was there any sort of education going on there?
No, this is something that I want to tell you, and I usually do. While we were in the camp, you know, we were children, and children didn't, under the age of 15, didn't have to work. The parents had to go to work, and one worked one place and someplace else, but the children had nothing to do. No schooling, no books, nothing. It's total boredom, hunger, miserable. Unfortunately, people were dying, and as Bergen-Belsen had no gas chambers, there weren't crematorium enough to get rid of the people, and the bodies were lying all around. I have never done it myself because it frightened me, but I have seen people playing with the bodies, you know. And I know that certainly the last few months, that at night when we went to sleep, in the morning we woke up, oh, this one is... Death didn't mean anything anymore. You really had even no respect for it. Oh, they're gone. But the children didn't do anything. Total boredom. Be glad that you can go to school. Bitch about your homework, but do it.
Have you recorded your story for the Holocaust Museum?
Yes. I have done that a few times to different places. And I wish I could make it more palatable, but I can't.
So you returned to Amsterdam after you were liberated. You went back to Amsterdam?
Yes. Yes. After the war, we went back to Amsterdam. I went to school there, I graduated there, and then I went to the States. And I came here on a visit. I had a visitor's permit for 3 months, and I had made up my mind. I'm never going back to the war again. I had to go sometimes. I will not live there anymore. Now I think I may want to go.
Did your whole family die except for you?
No, my brother, now I'm the only survivor member of my family. But after the war, my father and my brother and my brother died 25 years ago.
They came to the States with you, though, right? Your brother and your father?
No. I came here by myself.
What was the return like to Amsterdam? I mean, the neighbors, the people that you had known your whole life had turned almost like...
I think I myself I had maybe some friends that I had played with out in the street or whatever you did in those days. They were friendly, and it was, I personally found it very difficult. But my father started his business again, and he had tremendous help. I'm very proud of my father, because when we came back to the Netherlands, we came back in Eindhoven, where the Philips factory are, and they put us there in quarantine. And some big car came driving up, and one of the factory's owners that my dad had done a lot of business with came to pick my dad up. We had to stay there. But my dad went with him, he took him to his house, and my father had no clothes on his body. My father came after we were liberated. He had made a pair of slacks and a shirt for my brother, and I had a dress. And I can't draw, but if I could draw, I can draw the dress exactly. But it was, and I had a pair of shoes with wooden soles where he got it from, I don't know. But he got it. But he himself had a blanket around him. And the train that we went to Holland with, he still had that blanket. And that car came for him to these people lived in that area of Eindhoven, and there were lists with the people that were coming in, so they knew we had come. And he took my father to his house, he gave him a bath, he put a set of clothes for him, and as my father walks downstairs, he feels in the pockets, I'm having a suit on my body. And there is money in there, so he said to the man, Willems, I just found his money. Well, you must have left it in the suit. He said, oh no, he says, I put it in there because I know that you will start your business again. And I know that we will settle that later. And when he came to Amsterdam and he went to the bank, they told him, paper, any amount of money you need is there for you. It was a very unusual man. And fortunately, well, I'm his daughter, so I loved him, and I thought he was the most wonderful thing that walked this earth.
Any questions?
I'm sorry.
Did you keep your hope going? Or did you think you were going to be okay? Even though
Well, I sometimes discussed it with my brother. I said, did you ever think, you saw people dying left and right. And unfortunately, the crematorium, they weren't large enough in Belgium so that the people, there were bodies all over. But it never occurred to me, and I said to my brother, did it ever occur to you? No. It had become, we were there, and I don't know whether I thought of liberation. I don't remember that. I must have. Do we ever get back to Holland? I don't know. But you accept. I do think that we survived because my parents were with us. They were there. And I feel, and I'm very grateful that I always was with my parents because I think that their love really kept us going.
Is the star that you showed us before the actual yellow star that you wore?
This is not we did wear this star, we had it on here,
But that's not your.
but it is not this one. Somebody once gave me one because I think I want to show people how humiliating it was. Can you imagine? I had this beautiful Star David, little gold thing, was maybe smaller than what I'm wearing here. And I had to lift it up. And then on all my outer clothes, I had to wear this star. That was humiliating and painful, and we had to move to a ghetto, but okay. And I don't remember what I thought of the star at the time. That's what we have. Every child over the age of 6 had to wear all outer clothing. And believe me, it wasn't very good to be punished ever.
Did you ever get yourself another Star David that you wore around your neck? Or
No,
was
I
it-
had one on my bracelet that I and I have lost it, and every time I see the little loop hanging in it, I have to go get another one. But I never wore it around my neck, but I usually have it on my bracelet, because I wear this bracelet all the time. Yeah.
Were you very close with your brother?
My brother and I were exceedingly close. We had gone through so much together, and we really were very close. And I must say, he died 30 years ago, but I still miss him.
When you were not going to give all your toys away, did you ever keep anything?
When you got to give your things away,
Yeah.
what kind of toys and things, do you ever wind up spending anything, or was it all?
No, I think we had to give up like our bicycles and scooters, and you know, I was not a doll player, but I think if I had had dolls, I'm not sure I had to give that up. That I don't really remember. But I remember where we were standing in line, you know, we had stuff and behind me and behind me and before me the people. Everybody had to bring their stuff. But our bicycles was the worst thing, because I don't know if you've ever been in Holland, even today, in spite of 12 million cars, there are 24 million bicycles. Everybody still rides the bicycle. It's the bicycles we have to give up.
This is another question. When you went through this and your family came out the other side, to some degree, you know, I know you lost a lot of extended families. Did you as a family ever kind of like sit down and say, wow, we went through this, we survived, what do we do now? How do we go on being who we are, who we were?
Well, we came back to Amsterdam, and actually, it was my dad and my brother and me. My father had one older sister, and she and her husband and children survived. As a matter of fact, my cousin is going to have her 80th birthday in December, and I'm flying to Amsterdam as a surprise. She doesn't know I'm 68 times. She said, I'm making such a big party, you're coming? I said, no, I'm not coming. But I made arrangements with her daughter that I'm going to be there for her birthday. And I must say, I'm looking forward to it.
Did it bring you closer to your Judaism, or?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think, well, we're close, we call regularly. I think we're probably closer than, I see more of her today than I would have when I lived in Amsterdam. I think. We don't know.
What about not just that the day maybe also, but what happened in the Jewish community when you came back?
Well, I think that started again, more or less. I know, no, I didn't come out of a synagogue or going family. My dad never went to synagogue, and my mom fasted on Yom Kippur because her father fasted. That I do remember. My mother never lit candles on Friday night. We had a special dinner and we had a challah, but she didn't, there was no bracha set, there was no candles lit. Never, I remember that once I saw it at my aunt's house, and it was my grandfather that did it, my father's father. And I don't know why, there's nobody I can ask, but I remember a little table with the challah and wine, and he was standing in front of it, and it was the only, and I think he lit candles, maybe he didn't, but I remember it, that he said a special prayer, and it was in the corner, and why that was, I don't know. I really don't know. But, you know, we were very, I always knew I was Jewish, that was not something that, but there was no involvement in any kind of, and we didn't have to go to school on Rosh Hashanah, but when we had to, I was, as I said, in second grade or Saturday morning, I could go to school because I went with this man. But once there was French on Saturday morning, oh no, you have to go to school first. And I don't know. But to me, personally, it was always important. But you know, I don't know then, but certainly later, I like being Jewish. I still do.
Amsterdam, we're going to wrap up, I'm sorry. Amsterdam was, like Betty said, one of the centers of Jewish learning and sort of the Enlightenment, like it was for a long time. And it is, once again, there's a lot of other Jews that are coming back.
Yeah, but it is not.
It's not what it used to be.
No,
But
I think Amsterdam had over 100,000 Jews in a city of 500,000 or 600,000 people. 100,000 per Jew, or a little more.
But the country lost the highest percentage of its Jewish community.
I think today there are like 36,000. I am not really sure, but that is numbers
So again, for stories like this that we take a time to hear and to sort of think about and listen and ingest, we got to remember what's going on in our current political system and make sure it can't happen ever again. Thank you, Betty, very much for.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, everyone.
You can ask me whatever you want.
My family got out.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I was able to the Holocaust Museum. They have it, but I wouldn't know otherwise.
Okay, so
my brother came to the States eventually. I was here and lived. Yes, he has a wife. He had a wife, 3 children. No, I have still family in Oregon.
No, my daughter's embarrassed.
Don't be embarrassed. I used to be that too, but it's not. You'll get over it. I think I wouldn't know any place else. Oh, good. Yes, I know him too. Then he knows a very nice menu of that. What is your name? Sloan? Okay. All right, I'll tell him that. Okay. Thank you. It was wonderful. This. So I can. Pardon?
nothing should be fun to hear. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story.
Okay.